Hey, it's Adam from Sklar Bikes, and today we're going to be talking about our gravel bike, the SuperSomething. If you haven't heard of Sklar, we're a small batch bicycle brand based in California. For a lot of years, I built custom bikes one at a time, but I switched to production stuff a few years ago in order to get more people higher quality bikes. During that time, I was lucky to get to build a lot of gravel bikes for all sorts of different people. Something I took for granted at that time was that every customer was coming to me because they were looking for something that they couldn't necessarily find off the shelf. Also, during that gravel heyday, when we were still figuring things out, we got to experiment with a lot of different things. A lot of the feedback I was getting from customers was, I tried this bike and I liked this about it, but here's the thing I would change. In hindsight, that was a super good education for designing bikes like these. The SuperSomething was the first production frame that Sklar offered, starting back in 2021. Since then, people have loved this bike, and version 2, which we're looking at today, has most of the same features, same geometry, similar fit, with a few notable improvements. We could do a whole video on geometry, and we probably will later, but this video is going to focus more on frame construction and details. So let's chat about those now. First, let's talk tubing. The first thing to note with the tubing on the SuperSomething is a full new spec from version 1. Pretty much everything has been redone with the tubing on the SuperSomething, and between frame and fork, we're about 1.5 pounds lighter from the first version, which is very substantial. Here's an actual example of the ovalized top tube made by Fairing, and as you can see, it's ovalized on the end and all the way across, which means it's thinner in this dimension than this dimension, and so you could make the argument that it is more vertically compliant and laterally stiff, but mostly I think it looks cool. This is a really refined tube that I'm excited to have on the production frames. As with all of the frames that we make at Sklar, we have a size-specific tubing selection, so you can notice this size small has a smaller diameter down tube than the size medium large here, and that is because smaller riders typically weigh less. Also, a more compact frame is stiffer, so we want to use smaller tubes that make the frame flex consistently for riders of different sizes, and that keeps the ride quality really nice for every rider. We use a pretty standard 28.6mm seat tube, which pairs nicely with a 27.2mm seat post. We like 27.2mm seat posts because they offer a nice amount of flex for the frame, which that's one of those things that keeps you more comfortable all day long, especially if you try out one of our titanium seat posts. The seat tube also has a slight bend, you'll notice, to optimize tire clearance. The frames clear up to about a 52 to 2-inch tire, something like that. Personally, I don't like a dropper post on a bike like this, but if you are interested in a dropper post rigid bike, I would definitely check out our Performance Basket Jammer, or PBJ bike, which you can learn more about here. And that is a great bike for having a dropper post. But the SuperSomething, we're going more all-road, more gravel. That's our vibe. As we move to the rear triangle, you'll notice the Chainstay yoke, which is cast out of chromoly, and that's something I'm really excited about. Something I've been having fun with is designing these small parts. Our other two models, the Talltail and the PBJ, also use a cast yoke that shares a similar design language, and keeping kind of the visual ideas similar across the models is something fun. It's optimized for a 1x drivetrain, but some 2xs will work. Also on the rear end, you'll notice these 3/4-inch chainstays, which taper down nicely. They ride really, really nice, and I'm super excited about the ride quality of this bike, and has a lot to do with these chainstays, which are both tapered and butted. Also on the rear ends, every size has size-specific diameter seat stays. So again, the smaller frames with smaller triangles are stiffer, and also those riders typically weigh less. So we're reducing the diameter of the seat stay, which allows for more flex in the rear end. Flex sometimes gets a bad rap, but if you have a frame that can flex, it keeps your wheel on the ground, which gives you better traction, and it also gives you more comfort. So you end up having a more comfortable ride, you have better control of your bike. What's not to like about that? The big change between SuperSomething version 1 and version 2 is the UDH dropout and flat mount brakes. The UDH dropout ships with a standard UDH hanger, which means you can run any derailleur you like. Also, you can pop that out and bolt on a SRAM transmission drivetrain if you would like to run that. For many years, I was not sold on flat mount brakes, but trying them more in the last couple years, they've come a really long way since the first version. And I also feel like as a designer, part of my job is to make building up these bikes as easy as possible for all the customers. If you're gonna go buy a group set these days, it's gonna be a flat mount. Pretty much everything on this frame is thought out so that you could do something that simple as just go buy a force group set and you put it on here. Everything's gonna work really nice. And yeah, that took a lot of thought and effort to make it so. Also on the rear end, you'll notice we have some rack and fender mounts. Stay tuned for a Sklar specific rack that's going to play really nicely with all the frames. Nice to have fenders. I use a SuperSomething as a commuter, or if you're a winter rider in a rainy place, always a good option to have. Going back to the front of the frame, let's talk about the fork. Forks are super important for how your bike rides, and we would definitely not overlook the fork. Some improvements we've made from version 1 is that this fork is a little bit leaner, meaning smaller diameter tubing, and that makes it a little bit flexier. And again, with the flex, allowing your frame and fork to flex keeps your wheel planted on the ground, which gives you better traction, better control of your bike, and it makes for a more comfortable ride. So we're a fan of flexi forks, flexi fork fans over here. I mean, they're not like crazy flexi, but you'll notice it, which is good. You want to notice it. I caved and I went for the 3-pack mounts on the side, which people asked for. You can also use those to mount a bag support or a rack. And we have also an eyelet down at the dropout, also for a rack or for fenders. You'll also notice that the fork uses flat mount dropouts matching the rear. Designing a disc fork can be challenging because there's a lot of force right here at the end of your fork blade that occurs when you're braking. A lot of times forks are overbuilt to account for that disc brake stress, and I think we've come up with a nice way to keep the fork riding well, but also be strong enough to use a disc brake. We're also using new dropouts on the fork, which are even lighter. As I said, this frame set is quite a bit lighter than version 1, and we're building up some really nice light bikes. Not that we're weight obsessed, but it is something to pay attention to. With this model, we are offering a paint-matched carbon fork. More on that soon. You could also run a suspension fork if you wanted to. The EC3444 is just a cool looking way to do that. It's sort of a nod to the old external cup headsets that you had on any classic steel frame. So I'm into that aesthetic. It looks cool. It functions really well. For example, I swap between suspension and rigid forks on some of my bikes. You just keep a crown race on each fork and it's a pretty quick swap either way. All right, one last thing to talk about on these frames is cable routing. And we have a pretty standard system around here for all of our frames, which is to use these bolt-on cable guides. Having the cables routed externally makes it really easy to assemble and work on your bike, and we're always into making stuff easier to work on. They're also modular, which means like if you wanted to run a transmission wireless drivetrain, you can swap out the double clips that these ship with for a single, because you only need one for your brake hose. Or if you wanted to run a front derailleur, you can use a triple to route your cable back there. Running cables along the underside of the chainstays means that none of your cables or hoses will get sucked into the chainstays while you're riding. Your tire will want to push them away in case something happened. I always like zip tie guides for the brakes because cutting hydraulic hose is never fun. And for rear derailleur routing, I always like these little loop guides, which are kind of a nod to classy old frame builder style. So that's it for the SuperSomething. Thanks for checking them out. They're available now at sklarbikes.com, available as a frame set in either of these two lovely colors, or as a complete bike as well. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our email is hello@sklarbikes.com. And while you're there, subscribe to our newsletter. Also, if you like our videos, please subscribe. Check out the other ones. We're working hard on them. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.